Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
All right. Well, welcome back. First, I'd just like to welcome anyone who's new or returning after a long absence. Is anyone online new, or you just unmute and say hello and give us your name? No? Anybody in the room? Want to say hello? All right, well, it's our custom to go around the room and each say our name. My name is Risha.
Christian. Jim.
Greg.
Jim.
Steve.
Bob.
I'm Brad.
My name's Cass.
I'm Tom.
Bill. Tony.
Jose.
David.
All right, welcome everyone in the room. And then online we have Daniel, Edward, Francis, John, Steve, Vicky, Michael, Sue, Andres, and Beckis. Welcome everyone. And it's my pleasure to introduce our teacher for today. Liên Shutt is a priest lineage holder in the Shunru Suzuki tradition. Born to a Buddhist family in Vietnam, she received her meditation training in the insight and Soto Zen traditions in the U.S., Japan, Thailand, and Vietnam. She was a founding member of the Buddhists of Color in 1998 and currently is the guiding teacher of Access to Zen, an inclusive anti-oppression sangha and nonprofit in the SF Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. She lives on the Lonely Land, currently called San Francisco, with her partner, exploring waterways and forests as often as they can. And I will put the link in the website for ways to connect and practice together virtually.
Good to see everyone. Maybe just an update. I live in West Oakland now. Still a Lonely Land, but West Oakland. So always happy to be here. I have to say I was trying to think of a Mother's Day joke, but then I don't know one, and two, I was worried it would be very misogynistic, so had to let that go. And I want to honor the mothers in our lives. And in particular, I'll say that as many of you probably might know from me being here, I'm adopted, and part of the reason I moved to San Francisco was I wanted more a queer Vietnamese community from Seattle. This is 95, and 3 weeks after I got here, they had a Vietnamese queer conference in San Jose, 200 and some people. Sponsored by Living Well. Do you guys remember Living Well? Right now it's called something else. I can't remember what it's called now. But I met 200 some people, mostly gay guys, and like 30 lesbians. And I met 3 guys who are like my Vietnamese brothers, and one in particular. His mother kind of took me under her wings, and she just died last week, and I was just at her funeral on Thursday. So I want to dedicate today's talk to her. And also, if you saw me checking my phone, it wasn't to check my email. Blanche Hartman, who many of you know, remember, she gave talks here. The first abbess of San Francisco Zen Center. This is also the anniversary of her death, 10th year. I can never remember the date. That's why I had to look it up. And also she'd be 100 now, so today's also dedicated to her. So today, I wanted to talk about wisdom, in part because on Mother's Day, just thinking about, the wisdom that our parents impart to us, which I know I rejected when I was young, and the older I've gotten, the more I realize, there was a lot of wisdom there. So, of course, prajna, or panya, is in the 6 paramitas, and the paramitas, of course, mean to get to the other side, or the perfection. And in particular, in the Soto Zen tradition, it's the perfection of character, the perfection of your development as a person. So, of course, in the Mahayana tradition, it's the 6 paramita, dana, sila, kshanti. Oh, sorry, I should say what they are. Dana is generosity, or more specifically, actually, dana is the gift or the giving, right? Kaga is really generosity. Sila or shila, or virtue or ethical conduct, or I like to say compassionate connection. It's the interactive part of the Eightfold Path, you could say. Kshanti, or tolerance or patience. Virya, energy. And in the paramita, specifically the energy of how do you live your life. Energy of diligence, but also really the implication again is how do you live your life as a person with character. Jhana or dhyana or concentration, and then prajna, wisdom. So in, of course, the Mahayana and Soto Zen tradition, or Zen traditions in general, it's the prajna paramita is the wisdom that's beyond wisdom, which actually reminds me, my first practice period at Tassajara, Blanche was still abbess, and she was the leader. And I had done insight before, Spirit Rock, really, tradition. And I went to Tassajara in the summer. Many of you have been here at Tassajara? Yeah, the summer is a resort. And then when you work, in those days, in 2002, if you work the whole summer, then you get 2 practice periods of 90 days each. And I was just doing it to do a 3-month practice period on this side, on this coast, to be closer to my sister, and more available to her. And, Blanche, if you remember Blanche, she's an extrovert and she liked to talk. When I became her jisha, her attendant, and set up PDs for her, or Dokusan practice discussions, they could go on for like an hour, which is hard for a scheduler because, you have people waiting and, So she was and so when there's a ceremony at the end of the practice period in which she sits on this, the chair, and then we all come and do some bows, and then we ask her a Dharma question. And so I went up there and I said, what is? And I said, please tell me this, answer this without words. Because, she's so verbose, right? And I just thought, I was really into being clever and trying to get it, right, at her. Since it's technically Dharma combat, right? Well, that's part of the tradition. And so I said, without words, what is wisdom? And she went, And then I said, well, what is wisdom beyond wisdom, right? There's this whole thing in Zen. She jumped off her chair and started to bow to me. And I was pretty new. I mean, it'd been 3 months 8 months, I guess, at that point. But, Zen with all its stuff, the teacher and the abbess, right, it's just like up. And so I was very taken that she plopped down on the ground to bow to me, which of course I returned. So to me, on a certain level, that wisdom beyond wisdom is this very interactive way. So, and when we talk about wisdom in terms of the teachings, there are 3 levels of wisdom that we can understand. First, there's the learning or the knowledge wisdom, which I think many of us understand wisdom as. How do I get more information? And I think it's useful, especially, in the study of Buddhism, right? This is why reading the sutras or suttas, having classes in a practice period, we always have a study topic, right? Retreats, there's a topic. Listening to Dharma talks would be under that. Memorizing chants or suttas or the precepts, of course, is part of that. Then there's reflection wisdom, knowing through experience. So it's not just intellectual idea. This is, according to Edward Kanzi, this is what can also be called discursive reflection. So there's still thinking is involved. Thinking in the sense of trying to make sense of things. And then discussion with others. Again, this is why we take classes. This is why there's a Q&A for the most part after talks, which I'm hoping we'll have. And then the wisdom developed from meditation or bhavana. Knowing or understanding that is more engaging. So today I thought I'd talk about what is the perfection of wisdom of queerness. So one, intellectual knowing, knowledge kind of wisdom, is from Edward Kanzi. The mainstream of Buddhist tradition has always greatly esteemed learning. Our attitude to the apple of knowledge differs from that of many Christians. On the whole, we regard it as rather more nourishing than baneful. This wisdom is not the wisdom that can be found in the untutored child of nature, the corny sage of the backwoods, nor the self-made philosopher of the suburbs. It can operate only after a great deal of traditional information has been absorbed, a great deal of sound learning acquired. So, to me, in some ways, in terms of queerness, this is like trying to figure it out, and I'll admit, I've been coming here for a lot of years, but those of us in this room, we have some years behind us, myself included. So, this is when we're trying to figure it out because we were raised in conditions in which, because now, I bring that up because in the Bay Area, in particular, being queer is just I have my partner's niece, she's in her early 20s, and when she was in her late teen, she had her first relationship, or we heard a rumor, so we were trying to talk to her, and we thought we'd be open about sexuality and what gender and all that, and she was just so about it, we thought, because it was hard for us, right, to come out, to really know ourselves in that way, but seems really easy for a lot of folks, especially in the Bay Area. So this is just more towards, I know when I came out in the 90s? No, 80s. So you have to think about it. It was hard, right? And so it was something that I actually was even clueless about. That I didn't, because of the way I was raised, I wasn't, that wasn't a reflection in my life. And so I remember when I lived in Egypt and my sister and I were in our teens, it was hard to get English books, but she would get Harlequin romances, remember? And I was not that into them, except for it was kind of the thing to learn about it. And I remember, so I would take some of them and read them, and I always liked the ones. Who here has read Harlequin romances? All right. Well, they always start out with a chapter in the front of, I remember it as, there's a chapter. The ones that I really liked are the ones that had a chapter that was from the perspective of the guy. Oh, Harlequin romances are always from the women perspective. But there would be a chapter from the guy's point of view about seeing the woman, And so later I realized, oh, that's because I'm queer, because that's the one where, right? But for many years I was like, why, those were the ones I liked better. So in a way, this is kind of the searching, right, for knowledge about what we have a kind of, for me anyway, a visceral kind of understanding of already. And of course, it also was kind of a search. I know, when I joined Rape Crisis when I was 19, there were lesbians there. And at first I didn't even really knew they were lesbian. I just thought they were so nice to each other all the time, right? Always kissing each other on the cheek and hugs, because I also grew in a family where we didn't really do hugging and stuff. So, that, and then also like all the TAs in my women's studies classes, a lot of lesbians there, and reading books, a lot of reading books. So for me, part of the understanding of my queerness is from really searching for reading, books about it, getting information about it. And then come reflection wisdom. The knowledge through experience. So it's not just an idea anymore. Here's the highest wisdom is seeing that in reality all phenomena incomplete, impermanent, and not self. This understanding is totally freeing and leads to the great security and happiness, which is nirvana. However, the Buddha doesn't speak too much about this level of wisdom. It is not wisdom if we simply believe what we are told. True wisdom is to directly see and understand for ourselves. So, discursive reflection again, discussion with others. So to me, this part in terms of our queer identity is very much about coming out stories. Again, maybe, I don't know, I don't hang out with young folks that much, but I know coming out stories was huge when I was coming out. Usually when you met a queer person, unless you were hitting on them, you're like, what's your coming out story, right? I know that was big when I was coming out. Also doing queer identify things, right? Going to bars, going to pride parades. I remember I went to school in Oregon, and, we'd come here to go to the big queer parade, right? So, also the various hairstyles that would identify you. I was the classic, quiet Asian girl, long hair with bangs. And then when I came out, right, it was the bi-level. Remember the bi-level, which might be coming back, I think, of the 80s. I don't know. None of you guys are nodding your head, but the bi-level haircut was really big when I was coming out.
Briefly.
I'm sorry?
Briefly.
Briefly. All right. And clothing, right? Also, that kind of queer spectruming, I would like to say. I know when I first thought, maybe, I was bi for 6 months because I couldn't quite say I was a lesbian, right? So for me, that was kind of, this is in the 80s again, right? That kind of like not quite sure and yet trying to identify. And then, of course, sexually exploring. So these are ways in which we're actively clarifying our sense of what it is and also the information we've been given about it, right? Which again depends on how we get the information and also because of mainstream kind of information about what we are. And then a third, of course, is the bhavana, or the understanding that's developed through meditation. The knowing and understanding without averting or turning away. So this takes time, and it takes being with, and it takes going through trial and error. Yes, you could say that's also experience kind of knowledge. And yet, to me, this is also a kind of embodied wisdom, an embodied wisdom. So much of meditation is actually embodying I know I came to meditation thinking I'm going to change my mind, and I think it has. But to me, the mind changing in some ways is the result of practice. And also the body, we literally put our body in a certain position, right? It is a yogic position. That's why we call yogis, right? In which it is embodying awakening. And for me, awakening isn't some other knowing, but awakening is really living my life fully. Or better yet, the capacity and the awareness of being able to completely live life as it is, which as a coming out or as a queer person took a lot of work, took a lot of pain, took a lot of trying to figure out what that is. And so, for me, this embodying the queerness is very much a full understanding and appreciation of accepting myself completely, including, the body needs, emotional needs, the mental needs, but really the carrying ourselves as queer, without defensiveness, without shame, without guilt. Of course, we're humans, so it's not, I think the difference between wisdom that we might get from meditation and a Buddha is that embodying of complete being alive and comfortable and being fully alive is continuous. Mine's not so continuous, right? Luckily, in this kind of container, it can be continuous for an hour and a half. But when I step out that door, depending what's on the other side, that might change in a moment, right? Someone saying something to us or something. So this sense of being alive fully and embodying it completely. Yes, part of coming out, part of really appreciating ourselves as queer is we also carry that. And how we respond to what comes at us also comes with this kind of fully knowing, which I think, and the reason I think it's part of meditative is on the cushion, chair, whatever our position is this day, right? We really rest in that, right? We really, with practice, we're not doing, maybe this is my Zen mind, but we're not doing so much, are we? We're just resting completely in the aliveness. We have wisdom, right, of experience, of information on how we might adjust, right, say the body, when I'm slumping to lift myself up, when I'm having thoughts that are difficult or working with difficult emotions, I have tools, certainly from teaching, from experience of meditation, to adjust so that I can stay open and clear in this moment about aliveness, about fully being alive with no apologies, and how I manifest in this moment as I am. Here's from Reginald Ray. We say that paramita means transcendent action. We mean it in the sense that actions or attitudes are performed in a non-egocentric manner. Transcendent does not refer to some external reality, but rather to the way in which we conduct our lives and perceive the world either in an egocentric or a non-egocentric way. The 6 paramitas are concerned with the effort to step out of the egocentric mentality. I want to say a bit about egocentric. To me, when we're talking about non-ego, we're not saying there's no sense of I, of course. We're saying that we're flexible about the sense of I. And we know that it just arises due to conditions. And also it isn't always self-referencing. By that it means in meditation, we can have a sense of the self expanding. Not just the particularity, but the expansion, the looseness of it. And that's the non-egocentric. Just as queers, when we have a sense that we're more than just a queer, or another way to put it is our queerness is part of ourselves completely. And also that my sense of queerness is not just me, it's also all of you. So that's kind of a non-egocentric. So, Norman Fisher, was one of the abbots of Zen Center, or was, said that a way to understand prajna paramita is that it's twofold. One is the faculty to see things as they are. This is what is. And living from this knowing. That's the hard part, isn't it? You can say, oh, I'm queer, but how do we live fully as we are? That's what we're trying to do when we're living. So, for me, when we're settled into our queerness in its many forms, alone or with others, bringing awareness to how we are in the context of our lives and our families and our communities and the world, then perhaps we can say that this is the perfection of the wisdom of what it means to be queer. Thank you for listening. I'd love to hear any thoughts or questions about this. I'm always okay with coming out stories, too. Yes, and remind me names. I'm really good at faces, but names. Tom, yes.
And please speak loudly for the microphone in front of Leanne so that we can hear online. And
I can try and repeat the question.
Thank you so much. As you were first talking about, what it means to be queer and describing all that, it occurred to me that the word itself means to be different, unusual. And I think a lot of what you described, I can relate to, maybe all of us can relate to, because we relate to the world in a different way than, the normative way of viewing things. And like Harry Hay, which Cass is well informed of, he talked about the fact that we relate on a subject-to-subject basis, not subject-to-object, which is how a lot of the world relates to others and, in their life. And, I don't know what my question is, but I think that was an insight that arose from what you talked about, and maybe you can riff on that a little, if it...
Sure. So should I repeat the question for online? Or the framework? No. Okay. I see no. Okay. So what does bring up for me? So I think a lot of non-oppressioning, decolonizing, however you want to put it, is to realize ourselves as subject. When we've been told that we're object, then so much of our work is to remember that we're subject. Because that's internalized, right? We internalize that the difference is wrong or bad. So one, we have to say, we need it to be that I'm subject to. Then there's the practice of saying, all phenomena is a worthy subject. A Buddha, all phenomena is subject. I know my practice is to remember that all phenomena is of value as subject. And that actually subject and object are one, right? So if you have one way to say both are subject, the other to say that everything is subject. There's no two subject happening. It's just subject, right? There's just what is, and it's all valuable. And that's the hard part of practice, right? That remembering that all things are of value. First we have to say, I'm valuable too. Then we have to say, oh, all things are valuable. Because I'm taught, not only am I taught and internalized that I was an object and now I need to be subject, but I'm also taught that I have to make everything an object. In fact, that's how I relate to things. In practice, we start to see that everything is subject. And that's, it's like this kind of subject, not. And the paradox, of course, especially with mindfulness as a practice, is that we make everything an object because we're taught to be afraid of and keep object away, and also have bias about object. And by object, I don't just mean physical phenomena, but my anger is bad, right? My queerness is bad, or some part of my queerness, if not the broad. So then we actually need to see that, keep it as an object so that we can see our relationship to object is the problem. And so when we realize it's my relationship to the object that's the problem, then we start to say, how do I adjust my relationship to objects? And when we do, then we realize they're actually subjects, right? And then subject and subject is one, so to speak. I mean, maybe this kind of works. I took BART here, and I have motion sickness, so I'd like to sit facing forward on the train car. So I got come on in, don't worry. So I got on, and it wasn't busy, but, right by me, there weren't that many, we all like, in America, we all like to sit where there's no one else, right? So there was 2 seats, and I don't like to sit in the disability seats just in case, So I went and sat next to this female-looking person, and I kind of sat at the edge, right? And right away, that person looked around, right? And then after a few minutes, they got up and moved. Mm-hmm. And at first I was like, at first I was like, I was like, how dare you, And honestly, I was like, can't you see? I'm a spiritual person, right? And then I also thought, maybe, because a lot of people take me to be male gender. And I did have my baseball cap on, and I thought, and there was seemingly to me a female body person, and so I thought, well, maybe that was part of her fear. And then I just thought, what? Whoa! My own stories. I don't know the reason this person moved. So my smile first was like, up here kind of smile, right? But then it became like, I don't know. It's just, I'm going to still try to stay friendly to this person and friendly to myself about what happened. But then just kind of like leave it alone. Whereas I know, to me, that's the maturity of my practice, whereas before I would just get and get angry or whatever in some ways, right? So then maybe the other thing I want to say about wisdom is that as time goes on, and I heard this one, Manasara Bhikkhu, in terms of how he framed wisdom as discernment. Wisdom as discernment. To me, on a day-to-day practice, when we can remember that wisdom as discernment is really useful, because basically the discernment, as a meditative, our practice based on meditation, is we discern, this is just a story. If I want calmness of mind, or friendliness of heart, or ease of body, then I know I have the discernment to stop going that route, right? Be it the thought, outside of the thought, maybe I should get up and move and see how she feels, so it could have been a body thing too, right? So all these things become what is important, right? What is the perfection of character, you could say. To me, I decided a while back, which I also heard from the Dalai Lama as a thought, right? That kindness is his striving force. And when I heard it, I don't know, 20 years ago or something, I thought, I want to be guided by that. And it's taken me many years. But if that's my aim in life, is to live from kindness, hold kindness, be kind, then that's going to always be my discernment is, am I living that way? Am I feeling that way? Am I embodying that? Right? So that's why I think discernment as a sense of how to work with wisdom, I think is really important, especially on a day-to-day basis. Good riffing?
Yeah.
Good enough?
Now, can you do it without words?
Want to know my first response? And then, of course, I got the joke. All right. Of course, and I also thought I should just get on the floor. Yeah. And then I was mimicking. Yes. Bob, is it?
Yeah, Bob. Mm-hmm. Right. Good to check ARP here. I know who I am. What I love about it, and speaking of subject, which isn't, the word itself has difficulty, but kindness is sort of that bridge to me, it seems to me. Because the one advantage of being queer or gay is I'm dealing with someone who already knows my gender and sexuality, even though they have a whole history of adapting to it. So it's not so much, I already have a doorway to enter and learn about myself through another's eyes, so that the aspect of kindness of being the same as, which kind comes in English, you're of the same kind, kindred, or that it's a great practice if there's a way of embracing that as you're going through life and experiencing the other who happens to be the same gender, and realize those in discernment and as Brother David Steindl Ross used to say, of forgiveness. When there's a trespass, you give yourself back over to the other, and therefore there is that identification of self in other, like the wounded Christ and the Buddha. So it's, I'm not sure where I'm headed with this, but it's the one advantage of being gay or queer is that you then have to go deeper, if you wish, to discover yourself in another and be open. And from that, too, comes that lived experience, that then you're open to see how much, even though you may be male, you're also female, and be able to play those roles to loosen up one's own self-identity. And that discernment, that generosity of vision in practice allows the sense of the foundation that just consciousness is in our day-to-day life. That we are just generative or self-generative consciousness. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. I wonder.
Can I ask him a question?
No, you ask him if he can take. Whoa. Ask him if he wants the question first. Ask Bob if he wants.
Come to the Zen Center.
Yeah, I know. I know he is, but he would say when someone has trespassed against you, then you.
Well, the idea of forgiveness. So in Christianity, his point of view, a falsehood of forgiveness is absolution. The true act of forgiveness is giving oneself back over to the trespasser, to being open to the episode, but also the individual, so that you're not you don't create barriers out of fear, but that you constantly have an open terrain of activity, and basically live in a forgiving heart, because his like 3 little books are all based on heart focused from I think it was a Franciscan.
Thank you.
Sure.
That points me towards, I was thinking about the self, right? The sense of self. So to me, there's 2 ways to come about this. So one is to say, I know, or my sense is that if the environment, or my sense of the environment, is not safe, then finding it becomes much more important, necessary, comes in some ways from that survival thing in which I have to say who I am. I have to assert that, in fact. And of course, sometimes it's important, right? Because otherwise you're going to get killed or beat up at the minimum or spit at or yelled at or whatever. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But I know when an environment feels friendly or safe, then the sense of self settles, right? And so it doesn't have to assert itself. It doesn't even have to say who it is in some ways, right? It's, the other thing, of course, from practice we understand is, like anything else, it arises out of conditions, right? So I'm here, I don't have to assert a sense of self. There's no asserting of a sense of self until conditions make it so. We think there always is because the way we have been conditioned to be with our minds or our consciousness is to say, I am. And with practice, we realize there's no need for the I in there. It's just phenomena arising. I is part of everything that's happening. So when there's a condition, be it in a meditative state in which there's a lot of settledness of concentration and clarity of mindfulness, we see the emptiness of self, which doesn't mean there's no self. There's just, it's part of everything and it doesn't have to come forward, so to speak. Or, language is limiting, so either it's arising or it comes forward or whatever. In some ways, what I hear what you're saying is when there's conflict, then that's the barrier. And conflict happens because we have to feel like there's something we have to defend. Otherwise, there's no conflict. Okay? So then what needs to happen is, how do we dissolve the barrier or get past the barrier, which is then to open ourselves up to trusting, right? And I don't myself know whether, do we actually have to trust the other, or are we just willing to be trusting? And of course, when it's a specific person, then we're letting them in to maybe hurt us again or whatever. But
It's a case-to-case basis, true, in the individual action that the situation arises at this moment. Because part of the compassion to oneself is if there's incoming, you duck. But it doesn't necessarily mean that then I reify it to being in a constant fear when another similar situation, but not identical, arises. So there's always that aspect of faith in myself from practice or from whatever wisdom I've garnered over the years, but also knowing I always have a choice. So that's sort of the discernment you're talking about. And then I can react or I don't have to react. So it's just a quality, as the speech is about, is the compilation of all these things in a bowl of wisdom that I drink from, right? Which is accumulated experience.
sure, but then that's, of course, discursive wisdom. Right? Meditative wisdom is there's nothing to defend. There's no I to defend, and there's no you to defend.
But isn't that when you're in the meditative wisdom, is a moment, and when there's a certain quality settling out like dirt through water, right? So a clarity that you're approaching that point where the Buddha is touching the ground. Because the wisdom, that kind of wisdom in meditation is, if you get deep or settled enough, it's sort of an aspect of the old Western point of view of grounded being.
I think we're talking about a lot of things, and touching the ground actually to verify him that he's deserving. So that's very much a sense of self. I think we can go on and on about this. So let's just keep it there. Yeah. And I also see others going, Okay, so.
I have an online question too.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead, Ed.
Aloha. You were talking about your journey, and you said, I was bi for a while, and I was not ready to accept that I was a lesbian. My question is, or questions are, were you practicing bisexual, or were you, in your heart of hearts, realized that you were a lesbian, but you just weren't ready to acknowledge it?
Oh, I think looking back, that's the second, but in the moment, it was, I was not practicing, period, to be perfectly honest. I was too afraid to practice at that point. But in some way, that is the learning part, right? It was just all information. And so even the title is information, right? And for me, in terms of just like, what does it mean to be a lesbian, right? So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have a minute or two for any more questions.
Yes.
Can you just say a little bit about your Sangha? It sounds like wisdom is not like for just to acquire wisdom, but to engage with the world somehow. So,
Yeah.
And it seems, I get a sense that maybe your Sangha is more engaged.
Yeah, technically, I suppose we would call ourselves an engaged Buddhist Sangha. Why are you laughing?
But technically.
Only because, yes, we have a mission statement that's inclusive, blah, blah, blah. I just say technically because, fortunate or unfortunate, however you want to look at it, my Sangha, I lead it. right? It's not a big organization. And so in some ways, just what I say it is. And how they agree, or, so that's why, I would say technically. And I will say yes, and here's how I'll put it. In some ways, I think, two ways of putting this. One is that, and I'll say this is for, as many of you know, I combine insight and Soto Zen. And so I would say from my framing, from the insight tradition, I would say that we are practicing to expand the sense of what we value as subject, or more specifically to say that we're framed by the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, in the sense that we are clear what is suffering. We're practicing to be very clear about suffering, the causes of suffering, and the causes of suffering is much more inclusive, right? Non-oppressive, blah, blah, blah. So that sense of how do we see where we're blocked by not understanding that others' suffering is important. And so we're trying to be more inclusive of that. From what I would say to the Zen perspective is, I always say to my students, we come here, sure, you can come because I'm funny or, it's interesting and you like each other or whatever. But really, we come here to learn how to live together, right? We're here to really learn how to live fully, how we keep ourselves from living fully and how we keep others perhaps from living fully, and then how do we keep living fully. And so that, to me, that's much bigger than, but it's not separate from the other. Yeah. And can I make an announcement then?
Sure, please.
I think you guys have your own retreat. Is it usually in June? Do you guys?
Spring and fall.
Oh, okay. I have my retreat, the Access to Zen retreat, is June 13th through 20th. I don't know if you guys heard at Big Spring Garden Center, the Sierra Butte. But anyway, you're welcome to join if you like. It's up. Yeah, well, lots of space. It's a beautiful new center. It is about 4.5 hours from here, but well worth it.
What's your website?
Access to tozen.org. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Announcements from our host?
Hi, I'm the host today, so please stay and enjoy the company of the Sangha. I guess there's a couple of ways that you could help support the Sangha. One is I'll be coming around with the Don bowl, and Donna is the Pali word for giving. And so your generosity helps pay for this, the rent for this center, and our donations to our speakers, and it pays for the newsletter that goes primarily to people who are incarcerated. And it also helps with scholarships for our retreats to make them completely accessible. And what else? The other way that you could support is by volunteering. We have a number of volunteer positions here. One is to be the host, which means essentially seeing that there are refreshments and hot water for tea and being a welcoming presence. And we need some people to help with setting up the tech in the morning and putting it back in storage after the meeting. It's not a lot of work. Also facilitating, which is essentially guiding the meetings, like we did today. So if you are interested in helping with that, none of the positions are onerous. You could talk to me or to Grisha or Tom or Marcus, who are all on the board, and we'll give you more information.
Other announcements? We just had our GBF board meeting. I'm talking to that mic. And we sent out a survey, a Sangha survey, and we got 17 responses out of 500 or something. So I encourage you to just check your email and respond. It really helps guide our discussions and our decisions around how we keep this Sangha alive and well. So please.
When did that email go out?
Month ago. I can send it again. Yes.
Maybe we can put a link on the website.
Oh, okay.
I'll get with Henry.
All right, cool.
But do send it out in an email.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, resend it.
Will do.
And use the shaming of 17.
Thank you to the 17.
Oh, one more thing is that some people gather at around 12:30 at the front door to go out to have lunch together, and anybody's welcome to join.
All right. Shall we gather for our dedication of merit, which we can use yours or our...
Yeah, yours. I like yours.
Okay. Come on around. Please. Somebody else memorized it too.
By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Remember your name?
Andrea. Hi.
See you again.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.